It was the late 80s or early 90s. I was around 6 or 7 years old, home with my older sister, who was about 14 or 15. We lived in a small Texas town where everyone knew each other. My parents frequently let my sister babysit me, and we always got along well due to the age gap. It was winter, around 8 p.m., and dark outside. We were in the common room watching TV, one of those crime shows like 60 Minutes, 48 Hours, or Hard Copy. This particular episode was about a quiet man who went on a rampage, killing his neighbors and kidnapping their young daughter. The common room in our house had a large glass door leading to the backyard, surrounded by floor-to-ceiling windows. At night, it was nothing but pitch-black darkness unless the backyard light was on, which it wasn't. The front door, on the opposite side of the room, was a solid door with a glass stone door outside of it. About 45 minutes into the show, just as they were discussing the ongoing manhunt for the killer, there was a sudden bang, bang, bang at the front door. My sister and I screamed in terror. Then, silence. The only light in the house came from the kitchen down the hall and the glow of the TV. We tried to calm ourselves, convincing each other it was probably the wind blowing something against the door. West Texas winds were notorious for their strength. A couple of tense minutes passed. Just as we were starting to relax, we heard the stone door creak and close. Someone had to have opened it to bang on the front door. Frozen in fear, we stayed where we were, too scared to move. My sister crawled to the TV and turned it off with a loud thunk. The room was now dimly lit by the distant kitchen light. I'll never forget what happened next. I turned to glance at the glass door leading to the backyard. That's when we heard the doorknob rattle. It was locked, but not deadbolt. Someone was trying to open it gently. My sister and I held our breath. Then came the loud bang, bang, bang. The door shook violently as someone jerked it back and forth, trying to force it open. The entire wall of windows trembled, and I could see my faint reflection blur and sharpen with each pull on the door. My sister screamed at the top of her lungs, grabbed me, and dragged me to her bedroom. She slammed the door, barricaded it with her mattress and anything else she could find, and grabbed the portable phone, a heavy beige model with a long metal antenna. In her panic, she couldn't remember the sheriff's number, so she hit redial. The call connected to her friend, and she gasped out, "Someone's trying to get into the house. Come now!" Her voice was frantic, laced with profanity I hadn't heard from her before. I curled up on the floor, trembling. We didn't hear anything else after that. Eventually, we saw headlights as her friend and their parents arrived. We never found out who it was or what they wanted. The only trace of the night was a couple of scuff marks on the back door, though we couldn't remember if they had been there before. From that night on, we never forgot to lock every door in the house. The house I grew up in was haunted. The way it was laid out, I could see from my bedroom, down the hall, and into the living room. My parents' bedroom door was on the other side of the living room, directly across from my door. Late at night, I would hear someone pacing in circles in the living room. But the strange thing was, I was the only one awake in the house, and we didn't have any pets. I never said anything because I didn't want my family to think I was crazy. Eventually, I moved out and went to college. After I graduated, I hit a rough patch financially. My parents had since bought a new house, but the old one was still empty as they were considering renting it out. They offered to let me stay there for a while to save money. I immediately said no. I didn't want to move back in. When my mom asked why, I hesitated but finally admitted that I thought the house was haunted. The moment I said that, my mom froze. She turned to look at me with wide eyes and said, "You heard her too?" It turns out my mom had also heard the pacing for years. She never said anything because she didn't want to sound crazy either. All this time, we had both been hearing the same thing and keeping it to ourselves. The realization that we weren't imagining it still gives me chills to this day. When I was a teenager, my family moved into an old, creaky house in a quiet neighborhood. My new bedroom was small but cozy, with a single window overlooking the backyard. Everything seemed fine at first, until I started noticing the shadow. Every night, just as I turned off my bedside lamp, I would see a faint shadow in the corner of my room. It didn't move, didn't make a sound, but it was always there, darker than the rest of the room. I tried to convince myself it was just a trick of the light or maybe a piece of furniture casting it, but no matter how I rearranged the room, the shadow stayed. One night, curiosity got the better of me. I grabbed my flashlight and pointed it toward the corner. The beam illuminated the wall, the floor, and even the ceiling, but the shadow didn't budge. It stayed exactly where it was, untouched by the light. My heart raced as I slowly backed toward the bed. I told my parents the next day, but they just laughed it off, saying I had an overactive imagination. Weeks passed, and I stopped looking at the corner altogether. It was easier to pretend it wasn't there. But one night, as I lay in bed with the covers pulled tight around me, I heard a faint whisper, "Why are you ignoring me?" I froze. My breath caught in my throat. I didn't move or respond, and eventually, the whisper faded. The next morning, I begged my parents to let me switch rooms. They agreed, though they thought I was being dramatic. I never saw the shadow again after moving out of that room, but I still can't sleep with the lights off, just in case.